Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we're going to explore a really chilling and frustrating case. It unfolds on the high seas, a mystery that has baffled and frankly heartbroken a family for over a decade now.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Imagine this with me.
Yeah.
You've got this massive luxury cruise ship, the Disney Wonder, right? A floating paradise sailing on calm waters off the coast of Mexico. And there's a young British woman, just 24 years old, Rebecca Coriam. She's working her dream job, apparently in the children's area.
Right.
It's the quiet early morning hours of March 22, 2011.
Right.
And Rebecca is captured on a security camera. She's visibly distressed, pacing in a crew lounge, talking very intently on a phone. And then she simply vanishes into thin air. No other verified sighting.
It's a moment that just sends shivers down your spine, doesn't it? 1 minute, you have this living, breathing person caught on camera, clearly in a vulnerable moment.
Yep.
The next, just nothing. A complete void. It's the kind of sudden, inexplicable disappearance that really haunts not just the family, but anyone who hears this story.
It absolutely does. Her disappearance, it was officially ruled an accident by the company, by Disney.
Yeah.
But her family, they're absolutely convinced it was murder.
A huge discrepancy there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to unpack this mystery. We'll walk through the scant facts we do have and the overwhelming questions that have lingered for, over a decade. And we need to consider the unique fight for justice in a place where, typical legal boundaries just get incredibly murky.
Yeah, and this case tragically highlights what's often called the flag of convenience issue in maritime law. It's a big factor here.
Okay, explain that a bit.
Well, cruise lines often register their ships in countries with, let's say, less stringent regulations, not necessarily where they operate from or where the company is based. So in Rebecca's case, the Disney Wonder was registered in the Bahamas.
Oh, okay. So not the U.S., even though it's Disney.
Right. And this means that for an incident like hers, the investigation automatically falls under Bahamian jurisdiction. And that can mean vastly different standards, different resources, different transparency requirements compared to, say, the UK, where Rebecca was from, or the US.
I see.
It effectively creates this kind of zone where seeking justice can feel like it's happening a world away. It's complicated.
That immediately sets a very different stage than, a crime happening on land somewhere. So to unravel this complex web, we should probably start with Rebecca herself. Who was Rebecca Coriam? What was her life like before this fateful voyage?
Sure. Rebecca Coriam was, as you said, 24 years old, a British national from Chester in England. She was working as a youth worker on the Disney Wonder. She'd actually taken the job after getting her degree in sports development.
Okay.
And by all accounts, from her family, her friends, she was just a vibrant, enthusiastic young woman, really loved working with children. This job wasn't just any job for her. It was apparently her dream job. Yeah, she was described as being really happy with her career path, thriving in that environment. And importantly, she was in a stable, loving relationship back home. Her family has consistently and, vehemently denied any possibility of suicide. They emphasized there was no history of depression, no signs of distress leading up to this trip. Just every indication pointed to a young woman who was really content with her life.
That's crucial context.
Absolutely. This foundational understanding of who she was, her personality, her state of mind, it becomes incredibly important when you start looking at the theories about what might have happened.
So definitely not someone who seemed like they were struggling or looking for an escape, not someone unhappy with their life.
Yeah.
That context makes her disappearance even more, perplexing,
Right.
especially given the official story that eventually came out.
Exactly.
So let's walk through the timeline of that morning, March 22, 2011, the moments leading up to her vanishing. What exactly do we know happened, or what do we think happened based on the available evidence?
Okay, so the Disney Wonder was sailing off the coast of Mexico in international waters. At exactly 5:45 a.m., Rebecca was captured on the ship's internal security camera system. This is the last confirmed, verified sighting of her.
5:45 a.m.
Okay. The footage shows her in a crew lounge, like a common area for staff. And what's immediately striking is her demeanor. She wasn't just, hanging out. She was visibly distraught.
Distraught.
Yeah, engaged in a phone conversation. The video reportedly shows her pacing back and forth, looking agitated. There's even a description of her running her hand through her hair, like a gesture of real distress.
Visibly distraught. That's a key detail, isn't it? And deeply unsettling. It suggests something specific, something intense was happening right then. Do we know what she was talking about? Who was on the phone?
Well, that's one of the big question marks. The family later came to believe, based on their own digging and bits of information they gathered, that the phone call Rebecca was on, or maybe received just before, was with a male colleague who was also described as distraught.
Another distraught person.
Yes. Now, the exact content of that conversation, the specific identity of the caller at that moment, that's never been officially confirmed or released by Disney or the Bahamian authorities. But the family's suspicion really centers on some kind of heated or deeply upsetting exchange.
Okay.
What we do know from the CCTV footage is that a male colleague briefly joined her during this call in the lounge. He stood with her for just a short time.
The same colleague, possibly. Or someone else.
It's not entirely clear if it was the person on the phone or someone else intervening or just passing through. But after this brief interaction, Rebecca left the lounge. She walked out of the camera's view.
And that was it.
And she was not seen again on any camera or by any confirmed witness. The footage just ends there. It leaves this abrupt, chilling silence.
Wow. So her last known moments, distressed, on the phone, a brief interaction with a male colleague, and then she walks out of frame and just disappears. Yeah. That leaves this terrible void. How long was it before anyone even realized she was gone? When did they find out she was missing?
Rebecca failed to report for her scheduled shift later that morning. That would have been, maybe a few hours later. That failure to show up immediately raised an alert within the ship's command structure.
Okay, standard procedure, presumably.
Right. It prompted ship officials to conduct an initial search of the vessel. And it's crucial to understand, on a cruise ship, the cruise line's own security team typically handles these initial investigations. They're the first responders, securing the scene, starting the search.
Right, they're right there.
And the Disney Wonder is a massive ship. Thousands of passengers, hundreds of crew. A comprehensive search would involve checking crew quarters, common areas, all the accessible decks. It's a huge undertaking.
And her family. When were they told? This is often such a critical and painful point in these cases.
Yeah, and this is a major point of contention for the family. Crucially, they were not notified of her disappearance until hours after she was last seen, and even longer after she missed her shift.
Hours. Oh, wow.
Yes. This delay is something they believe was critical time lost, potentially for rescue efforts or for preserving evidence. According to Michael Coriam, Rebecca's father, they only found out via a phone call from Disney Cruise Line in the afternoon. So many hours after that 5:45 a.m. sighting.
What did Disney say initially?
He described the initial call as quite vague. Disney apparently just said Rebecca hadn't turned up for work. It was only later that the full gravity, the fact she was actually missing, became clear to them.
That must have been agonizing.
Absolutely. Eventually, the ship's captain did make an announcement to the passengers, which is how word started to spread on board. But despite what Disney described as a thorough search by their security, no trace of her was found. Her body has never been recovered.
This delay in notifying the family, combined with the fact that the initial investigation is basically run by the company she worked for, I mean, that immediately raises some serious red flags, doesn't it?
It does, for many observers and certainly for the family. It sets the stage for a lot of the conflict and suspicion that followed.
So, after Disney's internal search, what happened with the official investigation?
Yeah.
Who took over, and how thorough was it, really?
This is where those complexities of maritime law really kick in. Because the Disney Wonder was registered under a Bahamian flag, the case officially fell under the jurisdiction of the Royal Bahamas Police Force.
Okay.
So Disney Cruise Line handled the initial steps, collected whatever evidence they gathered, and then they reportedly handed it over to the Bahamian authorities when the ship eventually docked or when the police came aboard.
Right.
However, reports from the family and from journalists like John Ronson, who looked into the case, indicate that the Bahamian police spent only a single day on board the ship investigating her disappearance.
1 day. Just 1 day. For a missing person on a massive cruise ship with a potentially distressed last sighting.
That's the reported time frame.
That seems incredibly short. What could they possibly accomplish in a single day?
It absolutely raises serious concerns about thoroughness. I mean, imagine a vessel the size of the Disney Wonder. It's like a small city floating at sea, hundreds of crew, thousands of passengers.
Yeah.
To conduct a truly exhaustive investigation interviews, forensics, reviewing potentially hours of CCTV, retracing steps you'd normally expect that to take days, maybe even weeks.
Right.
A single day on board, as reported, really suggests more of a preliminary look, maybe a perfunctory examination, rather than a full-scale independent investigation. It leaves huge questions about how many crew members were properly interviewed, how much CCTV was actually reviewed beyond that one clip, what forensic efforts were made, if any.
And they were relying heavily on what Disney had already done, presumably.
That seems to be the implication. This brevity, combined with the reliance on the initial work done by Disney's own team, is one of the main criticisms leveled against the official response.
So what was the official conclusion? What did this brief investigation decide had happened?
The official report concluded that Rebecca likely went overboard. It was framed essentially as an accident.
An accident, just fell.
That was the implication. There was even some suggestion, floated at some point, of a rogue wave theory.
A rogue wave.
Yeah, the idea that maybe an unusually large wave washed her off the deck. But importantly, there was never any definitive evidence presented to support that specific claim. No reports of unusual weather or sea conditions at that time.
So it felt like grasping for an explanation.
It certainly seemed like an unsubstantiated theory, perhaps aimed at providing some kind of explanation for an inexplicable event without having to consider more, troubling possibilities like foul play or suicide.
Okay, so the official line is accidental fall, maybe a rogue wave, despite no evidence for the wave. What about transparency? Was Disney open with information, with evidence, especially towards the family or journalists trying to figure this out?
That's another major point of contention, and it feeds directly into the family's deep-seated distrust. Journalists like John Ronson, who wrote about this extensively, reported facing significant resistance from Disney when trying to get access to records, statements, or even just basic information, access to the ship, to the crew, to internal reports. It was all tightly controlled. This lack of transparency only fueled suspicions. It made it incredibly difficult for anyone outside the official loop to verify the narrative or pursue independent lines of inquiry.
Were there specific things they asked for that were denied?
Yes. For example, requests for the full CCTV footage beyond just that short clip of Rebecca in the lounge were reportedly denied. Disney often cited privacy concerns for other crew members visible, but for the family, seeing Rebecca's movements before and potentially after that phone call was crucial. Withholding that just looked suspicious.
Yeah, you can see why. This is where the story really splits, isn't it? Because the official narrative and what the family believes are just miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
How did Rebecca's family react to this official ruling of an accidental overboard?
They rejected it outright. Rebecca's family, especially her father, Michael Coriam, firmly believes she was a victim of foul play, possibly a homicide. They simply did not accept the official ruling of an accidental fall.
Why were they so sure it wasn't an accident?
For them, the idea of an accidental fall, particularly given Rebecca's experience working at sea, she wasn't a first-time passenger. She was crew scribe. It just didn't add up.
Right. She knew the environment.
Exactly. She was familiar with the ship's layout, safety protocols, the dangers of being on deck. They felt a simple accident was inconsistent with her character, her job experience, and especially those circumstances around her last sighting, the distress, the phone call.
Yeah.
Michael Coriam has been very public, very tireless, and fighting for answers, stating his conviction that his daughter was murdered.
And they felt key information was being held back, right?
Yeah.
What specifically did they claim was missing or wasn't looked at properly beyond just that short CCTV clip?
Yes. They contend that crucial evidence, things central to understanding her last moments, was either not handed over to the Bahamian police or wasn't made available for any kind of independent review.
Like what?
Specifically, they point to the phone Rebecca was using during that last sighting. They believe accessing her call records, or even the device itself, could reveal who that potentially distraught male colleague was and what that upsetting conversation was about.
Makes sense.
And as you mentioned, they demanded the full, unedited CCTV footage of Rebecca's movements, not just the isolated clip. They felt the complete video might show other interactions, maybe provide context, maybe even reveal what happened right after she left the lounge.
If there's nothing to hide, why not release it, you'd think?
That's precisely the family's argument. Why hold back specific pieces of evidence if the goal is transparency and truth?
And weren't there other strange things too? Things that happened after she disappeared that must have really fueled their suspicions.
Yes, absolutely. These details really deepen the family's suspicions and fundamentally challenged that overboard theory. They claimed Rebecca's credit card was used after she vanished.
Used? How? Where?
They alleged transactions occurred days after her disappearance in both Mexico and the Bahamas. Now, if that's true, it's a massive contradiction to the idea she fell overboard on March 22nd. It implies someone else had her card, or somehow she was alive and using it.
That's huge.
Huge. Additionally, her Facebook account was apparently mysteriously accessed or hacked, and some settings were changed after she went missing.
Why would someone do that?
Exactly. These inconsistencies just screamed foul play to the family. It suggested something far more nefarious than an accident, and that the official narrative was either incomplete or actively misleading. That alleged credit card activity in particular is incredibly hard to square with an accidental fall into the ocean.
So not only do they think evidence was withheld, but there are these active things happening with her personal effects after she's supposedly gone overboard.
Right.
That really blows holes in the accidental fall idea.
Mm.
What about this distraught caller you mentioned, the one the family suspects? Did they ever find out more?
The family consistently maintained that the phone call Rebecca received or was on just before she vanished was with a distraught male colleague. While, again, the identity was never officially confirmed or released, the family strongly suspected this interaction was pivotal.
Right.
They theorized it might have been a heated argument, maybe a distressing revelation, maybe a situation that just spiraled out of control. The whole idea of a distraught caller at 5:45 a.m. suggests something significant was already happening for someone else, which then, they believe, tragically intersected with Rebecca.
And the family didn't just accept the official findings. They hired their own private investigator, didn't they?
They did. They hired a former police officer, Mike Anderson, to look into it. And his work basically reinforced the family's belief that the official investigation was, well, inadequate.
What did he find? Or what were his conclusions?
He raised serious questions about the thoroughness, pointing out that astonishingly brief one-day onboard investigation by the Bahamian police, the lack of detailed follow-up, the numerous inconsistencies he found in accounts provided by various crew members when he tried to speak with them indirectly.
Did he face resistance too?
Absolutely. He ran into the same wall of silence and lack of access to crucial evidence that journalists reported. It just highlighted the power a corporation has over information in these situations. He ultimately concluded that the available evidence pointed much more strongly towards foul play than an accident or suicide.
With the official story so contested and the family pushing the foul play angle, it's no surprise Rebecca's disappearance became a subject of intense online speculation and various theories. Let's walk through some of those, starting with the official one, the accidental fall.
Right. The official narrative, as we've said, suggests Rebecca went overboard accidentally. The supporting points for this usually focus on her last known location being near a deck railing, combined with her visibly distressed state.
So the idea is she was upset, maybe not paying attention.
Exactly. That in a moment of emotional turmoil, perhaps related to that phone call, she might have lost her footing, leaned too far over, been caught off guard somehow, and fallen. It provides a sort of tidy, if tragic, explanation that doesn't require looking into malice or negligence.
But this theory, as you've laid out, has some serious holes. What are the biggest gaps that make it so hard for the family and, frankly, many others to accept?
It really does struggle. The key gaps are huge. First, how do you reconcile an accidental fall with that alleged credit card use after she disappeared? In Mexico and the Bahamas, that detail alone seems to just fundamentally contradict the ruling. Then you have the reports of conflicting stories from colleagues, accounts changing over time, adding to the confusion and distrust. And of course, the family's unwavering claim that crucial evidence, the full CCTV, the phone records, was withheld, preventing a complete picture.
Yeah.
And crucially, Rebecca wasn't a naive passenger. She was experienced sea crew. She knew the risks, the safety measures. The idea of a simple accidental fall feels less likely for someone familiar with that environment. It wasn't her first rodeo, so to speak.
Right. So the official explanation struggles. What about suicide? Was that ever seriously considered? And how did her loved ones react?
Well, in any disappearance at sea, suicide is often considered as a possibility by investigators, just as a matter of course. But Rebecca's family and friends absolutely vehemently denied this.
Because of her personality and state of mind.
Exactly. As we discussed, they insisted she had no history of depression. She was in a loving relationship. She loved her job. She had future plans. For them, it was completely out of character. Without any prior signs, any known mental health struggles, this theory is largely dismissed by those closest to her as just totally inconsistent with the vibrant young woman they knew.
So that distress seen on camera, they didn't interpret that as suicidal.
No, they saw it more as indicative of perhaps a sudden crisis, an argument, or reacting to some traumatic event involving someone else, not as internal suicidal ideation.
Okay, which brings us squarely to the foul play theory. This is what the family believes. What are the specific circumstances that support this narrative for them? What makes it compelling?
The foul play theory, which is the family's unwavering narrative, draws its strength from several deeply unsettling points. That strange phone call just before she vanished, leading to her visible distress, that's central. They believe it was an argument or a confrontation that escalated somehow. Then, the alleged post-disappearance credit card activity, used in places she couldn't have reached if she'd gone overboard. That strongly suggests a crime someone else had her things and was using them.
Right, that's hard evidence if true.
If true, yes. Then the mysterious hacking of her Facebook account again points to someone tampering with her digital life after she was gone. And add to that the inconsistent accounts from colleagues that the private investigator noted. All these things together paint a picture for the family of her being a victim of a crime, possibly homicide. These details are very hard to explain away with an accident or suicide.
But the challenge of actually proving foul play, especially without a body, that must be immense.
It is, and that's the heartbreaking reality for the Coriams. Proving it legally, without a body, without a confession, with the crime scene essentially being the vast ocean, it's incredibly difficult. Forensic evidence is long gone. It relies heavily on circumstantial evidence, on these inconsistencies in the official story, which, while compelling to many, are very hard to build a legal case on without more direct proof.
Now let's talk about the sort of elephant in the room when you have a powerful corporation like Disney involved. There are these strong allegations of a corporate cover-up. What's the thinking behind that claim? Why would Disney potentially do that?
Well, the accusation from the family, and echoed by many observers, is pretty straightforward. Disney had a massive vested interest in controlling the narrative to protect their brand.
Their image.
Exactly. A disappearance, especially one involving potential foul play on a family-friendly Disney cruise, that's potentially catastrophic for their image. It could cause immense negative publicity, scare potential passengers, damage that carefully crafted, squeaky clean reputation.
So the idea is it's better for business if it's just a tragic accident.
That's the alleged motivation, suppressing details, controlling information, steering the investigation towards an accident. It would be seen as a way to mitigate damage, avoid prolonged negative scrutiny, avoid potential lawsuits. It's not just about PR, it's about protecting a multi-billion-dollar enterprise.
And how might a company actually do that on board their own ship? What levers could they pull?
A cruise line has immense control on its own vessel. They control access to all security footage that's huge. They manage the crew, who are potential witnesses. They can control their movements, their communications. There have been allegations in various maritime cases, not just this one, of crew members involved in incidents being quickly repatriated, making them very hard to interview independently later. They might have crew sign non-disclosure agreements. Their internal legal teams are often the first involved, shaping incident protocols and initial communications. This inherent control can make it incredibly difficult for external investigators or even the family's own legal team to get full, unfiltered information. The company's priority is often risk mitigation and brand protection, which can inherently conflict with a completely open, transparent investigation. Information flow is largely in their hands initially.
And the family also criticized the Bahamian investigation itself, suggesting it might have been influenced or just wasn't thorough enough, right? Connecting it back to this idea of corporate influence.
Yes. They accused the Bahamian police of conducting a shoddy, incomplete investigation. They felt it was potentially influenced by corporate interests or perhaps simply lacked the necessary resources or agency. That one-day investigation timeframe really fuels this criticism.
Yeah, it looks bad.
It does. It makes it easy for critics to suggest the investigation wasn't as independent or rigorous as it should have been, especially relying so heavily on Disney's internal work. Plus, the Bahamian legal system might just have different standards for evidence, forensics, or public disclosure compared to the UK or US. There's often less external pressure, fewer resources for long, complex investigations, especially when a powerful global corporation is involved and the crime scene is miles out at sea. It creates an environment where accountability can just slip through the cracks.
There's another really messy element here, isn't there? The witness who apparently claimed to see something, but then recanted. Can you walk us through that? It adds so much confusion.
Yeah, this twist introduced a really profound layer of confusion and controversy. There was a crew member, reportedly an eyewitness, who initially came forward. He claimed to have actually seen Rebecca being thrown overboard.
Wow. That would be definitive proof of foul play.
Exactly. It would have been incredibly powerful direct evidence of a violent crime. However, this witness later recanted his story, took it back.
Why? What happened?
Well, the reason for the recantation is also contentious. There were media reports alleging that this witness received money from the Coriam family, supposedly a sum to help with their private investigation efforts.
Oh.
The witness then reportedly stated his initial account was false, that he'd only said it to try and help the family get answers or maybe gain something himself. So this development casts doubt everywhere. Was the original claim true and the recantation somehow coerced or bought off? Or was the original claim false and the desperate family inadvertently complicated things by engaging with an unreliable source?
It just muddies the waters completely.
Profoundly. It makes it even harder to figure out what really happened or who to believe. It's another layer of tragedy upon tragedy for the family, really.
And all of this is playing out against the backdrop of this complex maritime law and jurisdiction issue we talked about earlier. How does that specifically make things so murky compared to a typical land-based investigation?
It's incredibly murky, like you said, almost a legal twilight zone. The investigation fell under Bahamian law because the ship was flagged there. That often means limitations in transparency and oversight compared to what might happen in the UK or US.
Different rules, different resources.
Exactly. Different protocols for evidence preservation, maybe different levels of forensic capability readily available, different laws about public disclosure. When you have a huge multinational corporation like Disney operating under the laws of a smaller nation, especially for an incident far from that nation's shores, it can create a situation where accountability feels incredibly elusive.
So you're basically in international waters.
Right. Governed by the laws of a specific flag state, but with the corporation initially controlling the scene and the evidence. This whole tangle of international conventions and flag state sovereignty can leave families like the Coriams feeling totally adrift, facing a system that wasn't really designed for robust justice in these complex cross-border incidents at sea.
So putting it all together, what does this case tell us? It really highlights the unique challenges of investigating anything that happens on the high seas, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The inherent difficulties are huge, and the Rebecca Coriam case is just a tragic example. Traditional national borders and jurisdictions become blurred or limited. When a ship's in international waters, it's the flag state's law that applies.
Like the Bahamas here.
Right. So even though the victim was British, the company American, the location off Mexico, the investigation defaults to Bahamian law. That can mean different standards, transparency, resources than might be expected elsewhere. It can create this vacuum where accountability seems to just evaporate.
And the fact that the company itself is often the first investigator on the scene, that feels like a fundamental conflict of interest baked into this system.
It's a critical point, and yes, it seems like a systemic issue in maritime incidents. The cruise line's own security team is almost always first. They gather initial evidence, make initial reports, then hand it over.
And they have their own interests to protect.
Precisely. While they always maintain they cooperate fully, the accusations in this case withheld evidence. Limited access certainly put that initial control under scrutiny. The company's primary interest is often minimizing liability and protecting its brand, which can inherently clash with the kind of transparent, exhaustive search for truth a victim's family desperately needs. The initial scene, the crucial early evidence, is often managed by a party with a clear vested interest in the outcome. not a neutral law enforcement agency.
And through all this darkness, what really stands out, I think, for anyone following this case, is the sheer determination of Rebecca's parents. Michael and Ann Coriam's fight for answers is incredible.
It truly is. This case becomes a powerful, heartbreaking testament to a parent's worst nightmare and their unwavering love. The tireless efforts of Michael and Ann Coriam, it's incredibly moving. Despite the official ruling, despite over a decade passing, they've never stopped hoping they'll find out what really happened.
Yeah.
They've pursued every possible avenue, hiring PIs, appealing to politicians, talking to the media, even traveling to the Bahamas themselves to try and push authorities. Their enduring love, their refusal to give up, their belief that justice might still be possible. It's central to this story. It's a gut-wrenching illustration of the impact of such a disappearance, leaving a family grappling with questions that might just never, ever be answered.
And their struggle really highlights the immense challenge of fighting against such overwhelming odds, doesn't it? A huge corporation, a foreign government, they feel, failed them.
Exactly. They're up against this massive entity, Disney, with its vast resources and, frankly, a deep interest in protecting its image. Add to that a foreign jurisdiction that conducted what they saw as a cursory investigation. The path to justice is just incredibly steep, incredibly frustrating.
They've had to become experts themselves, almost.
Reluctant experts, yes, in maritime law, PR, investigation tactics, all while dealing with unimaginable grief. It's a testament to their strength, but also a stark illustration of how hard it is for ordinary people to get accountability in these unique legal environments.
This brings us back to that broader point about corporate power.
Mm-hmm.
How a large company like Disney can shape the narrative when something like this happens on their property.
Yeah, they can influence and control the narrative in significant ways, well beyond just deciding which bits of CCTV to release. Their desire to protect the brand is paramount. They control access to the ship, crew, footage, records. They have sophisticated legal and PR teams focused on risk mitigation.
Managing the message.
Right. Even when an external jurisdiction gets involved, that initial evidence collection and framing often rests with the company. This ability to manage the information flow, control who speaks to whom, shape the initial story. It makes it incredibly difficult for outsiders like the family or journalists to get a clear, unbiased picture. It's proactive management of the information around the event. Independent verification becomes almost impossible.
So Rebecca's story, in a way, it connects to wider, maybe systemic failures in maritime law itself, making the open sea almost a zone of limited accountability.
I think you could argue that, yes, it connects directly to these broader issues. The flag of convenience system, where ships register in countries often chosen for minimal oversight, combined with the company's immediate control over the scene. It creates scenarios where truth can be very hard to uncover. It highlights a potential gap in international legal oversight when it comes to the safety and justice for crew and passengers on these massive cruise ships.
It really is all about these tangled threads of truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are the fundamental unresolved conflicts here that just leave this case so open in people's minds?
The fundamental conflict is just stark.
Yeah.
The official ruling says tragic accident, possibly a wave. The family says murder and cover-up. There's really no middle ground there.
Polar opposites.
Completely. And it's worsened by the contrast between Disney's public statements saying they cooperated fully versus the family's persistent accusations of withheld information, lack of access, lack of real cooperation. Each side holds a totally different view of the facts, the process, the truth. As an observer, you're almost forced to choose. Do you trust the official brief investigation, or do you side with the grieving family's compelling, though unproven, narrative of foul play and failure?
And the heartbreaking reality, as you said, is that the full truth might never surface.
That's the tragic reality of so many mysteries at sea. The full truth of what happened to Rebecca Coriam might genuinely be lost forever, buried at the bottom of the Pacific, or just obscured by time, jurisdictional complexity, maybe deliberate obfuscation. Her story, though, and her family's fight, they continue to resonate. It's a constant reminder of the profound impact of a disappearance, leaving families trapped with questions that may never find answers. It's like the ocean itself becomes an accomplice, swallowing not just the person, but the evidence needed for justice. Trying to piece together a puzzle when half the pieces are just gone, or maybe actively kept from you, it's almost impossible.
This case definitely makes you think differently, doesn't it? About taking a cruise, perhaps. Thinking about that relative lack of legal oversight, the corporate control if something goes wrong, what does this tell us about safety, about justice when you're out there in international waters, maybe under the laws of a country thousands of miles away?
It tells us that while cruises seem like these carefree escapes, the legal framework around them is incredibly complex and, you could argue, less robust sometimes than what you'd find on land. The responsibility for that initial investigation, often falling to the cruise line itself, raises huge questions about impartiality, about transparency.
Yeah.
This case really underscores that reality. Accountability can be incredibly challenging when you're outside traditional national boundaries. It highlights the immense struggle families face seeking answers in those circumstances. It maybe makes you consider the fine print, the larger implications of being in these spaces where laws and oversight might be, let's just say, less rigorous than what you're used to back home. It's a stark reminder that the promise of luxury and freedom at sea comes with this often unstated risk regarding the path to justice if something goes terribly wrong.
The disappearance of Rebecca Coriam remains this haunting mystery over a decade on. A young woman vanishes from a cruise ship deck. There is an official investigation, but it's the family's relentless fight for truth, fueled by so many inconsistencies and unanswered questions, that keeps her story alive. The threads of truth here are tangled in this web of corporate control, a family's unending grief, and a justice system that, certainly for them, feels like it failed. Was it a tragic accident? Was it suicide? Or was it murder covered up? The full truth of what happened to Rebecca Coriam might be lost forever to the ocean's depths, but her story and her family's fight for justice, they won't be forgotten.
So what do you think happened to Rebecca Coriam? Do you lean towards the official theory, or does the family's narrative of foul play seem more plausible given the circumstances?
Next time we head to 1970s New Jersey, where the mysterious death of Jeanette De Palma sparked whispers of occult rituals and small-town secrets that lingered to this day.
Thank you for joining us for this exploration. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and perhaps leave a review for Threads of Truth wherever you listen. Your support really helps us continue to shed light on these unsolved cases and keep searching for the truth one thread at a time.